Here with Ken Klippenstein again for another segment of The Intercept on Breaking Points. Thank you guys for supporting Breaking Points, which facilitates this partnership. We want to talk about this week's elections. So it followed on a brutal week for the Democratic establishment previously, where Summer Lee whooped up on Steve Irwin in Pittsburgh, despite millions of dollars spent to support Steve Irwin. Jamie McLeod Skinner whooped on Kurt Schrader out in Oregon, despite Big Pharma running a super PAC on his behalf. The crypto guys, there were two crypto guys running in Oregon's 6th district. They both lost to a Progressive Caucus-backed candidate, Andrea Salinas. Fetterman from the hospital smoked Connor Lamb. Bad week all around for the kind of faction of the party that's been trying to slow down the Democratic Party from doing more while they have their majority. So,
or if you listen to Thomas Friedman, who's saving the party.
Who's saving the party, yes.
Our only hope of staying in power.
Only hope is to do less. And so the do less faction was up on the ballot box again. Two members of the so-called unbreakable 9. This was Josh Gottheimer's group of 9 House Democrats who teamed up with Manchin and Sinema to basically try to derail Build Back Better. Two of them, Carolyn Boudreaux in Georgia and Henry Cuellar in Texas, were on the ballot box. Filemon Vela, who was also part of the 9, a Texas Democrat, was not up for re-election because he is already a lobbyist. So he announced last year that he was going to retire at the end of his term. And then in March, he announced, actually, you know what? I'm done now. Because there's now a cooling off period that you can't directly lobby your colleagues for a certain amount of time after you leave. So he just sped it up by saying, you know what, I'm done in March. And by April, he was at Aiken Gump, which is one of the biggest lobbying shops in Washington. He can't technically lobby yet, but he can give strategic advice, he can give consulting, he can have lunches. Basically, he can lobby, but it allows him to start making that money much earlier. And he's going to probably give up his seat to a Republican in a June special election. Just absolute perfect, because progressives constantly getting told that they're not good team players, and this is what we got. So Carolyn Boudreaux wiped out by Lucy McBath we can talk about that one in a second. I want to get your take on Henry Cuellar, NRA-backed, anti-abortion Democrat, and Jim Clyburn and Nancy Pelosi and Reid Hoffman of LinkedIn and AIPAC come in just storming into the race to throw everything they have to defend Cuellar, and it looks like Cuellar's probably going to win once all the votes are tallied. What does it say about the Democratic Party leadership that they have this much enthusiasm to defend somebody like Cuellar in this moment?
Well, this has got to be one of the most awkward primaries for them in my memory, because we just had the Roe v. Wade and the horrible mass shooting, and this person who is just, whatever criticism you have of the Democratic Party, he's way out on the extreme beyond pretty much everyone else.
The Reid Hoffman's PAC, the super PAC that defended him, spent $750K on him, is called Mainstream Democrats. Pro-NRA and pro-life, anti-choice.
The only pro-life Democrat, right?
Yeah, that's not mainstream. That's not mainstream Democrats.
Right, and so now they're in a position, party leadership, Nancy Pelosi, Clyburn, and others, of having to say, this not only was the, morally right course of action, but it was a pragmatically smart one to endorse this guy who was under FBI investigation.
Let's talk about that. So he has said, he's actually telling people he's been cleared. That's not true.
What was it, a PAC that he distributed to look like a newspaper?
Yeah, he crafted a newspaper that says, Cuellar cleared, as supporters and allies were handing out this. But what they're referring to is there was his attorney, Cuellar's attorney, told the San Antonio paper that the FBI had told them that they are, quote, not a target. Now, being not a, first of all, that's his attorney saying that. FBI is not commenting on this. Second of all, being not a target doesn't mean you still won't go down. And it also doesn't mean you've been cleared. The FBI just generally doesn't clear people.
As someone who's covered the FBI for a number of years, they're not famously known for their candor around who's being investigated because they don't want people to know.
He says he's cooperating fully with the investigation. How often does somebody's home get raided when they're fully cooperating.
It's not something you see.
FBI.
It's not something you see very routinely.
Yeah. So they went into his house with the warrants, with the windbreakers. They did that whole thing. That was in January. In March, he qualifies for the runoff with Cisneros. Now he's up in the general election. This was the investigation appears to be around, and it's so bizarre, Azerbaijani corruption. One corrupt oil state to another corrupt oil state. He took a trip with his wife to Azerbaijan that we know, at least one that we know about, that cost something like $20,000. It appears that was paid for by the Azerbaijan government. He claims that he doesn't know that was the case, that it was the state-run oil company or whatever that was. But the state-run oil company was funneling the money through another organization. All of it was just looked corrupt on its face.
Right.
Like the idea that it wasn't is bizarre.
Well, let me add one more thing. From having covered the FBI, they're extremely sensitive to questions of political optics. They don't want to be in a situation where
they're not supposed to mess around with
Congress.
Not
only are they not supposed to, they really don't like to.
Like right before the election.
Exactly.
So in order for them to launch
the bar that you have to clear when I talk to some of these investigators, they describe anything politically sensitive. Like, for example, the Project Veritas investigation.
Right. SIM or something, right?
Put into what's called a special investigative matter, and they lock that thing down so that only a very small number of people can see it. The point of this being that, again, they are very sensitive to not wanting to seem like they are, interfering in any sort of fashion with either the parties that they depend on for funding each year.
Yeah.
Again, the bar that you have to clear to release an conduct a raid like that close to an election is really extraordinary.
And whichever way the race ends up breaking, it's going to be with 100 or 200 votes. And without the intervention of the party leadership, it just seems like there's no way that Cuellar comes out.
Which AOC seemed to hint at in a tweet, which is really incredible.
Yeah.
She just came out and said, what was it? She said, party leadership acts as, I'm paraphrasing,
incumbent protection racket.
Yeah. How often do you hear something like that from a member of either party,
And she made the point that if they succeed in doing this, they will have suppressed all this grassroots energy, and all they did was then force a pro-NRA, anti-choice Democrat into the general election over the objections of of the primary voters. And if they fail, they look terrible as well.
In an electoral environment in which it seems that the insurgent candidates are doing really well, I think there is.
And the Republicans are just going to hammer him for his FBI investigation, like the whole way through. So he's popular, so we'll see. But it's not a guarantee that he's going to win his election.
Yeah.
Real quickly, while we have time, the Carolyn Boudreaux race is fascinating because Georgia lost a seat, and so in the census, and so in the redistricting, you had Lucy McBath. These are two districts that are north of Atlanta. Mm-hmm. Lucy McBath in one, that's the one that John Ossoff ran for, lost, but then Lucy McBath won it. And then you have Carolyn Boudreaux. So these are neighboring Democratic districts. They both flipped red to blue in 2018. Lucy McBath, her son was murdered and was a victim of gun violence. And she has long had the support of Michael Bloomberg and his Everytown gun organization. And she also had the support of Democratic Majority for Israel, and she got some crypto money. So it's not as if this was a kind of squad versus centrist candidate. But Carolyn Boudreaux in the neighboring district, during this Build Back Better fight, during the Unbreakable 9 fight, she joined the Unbreakable 9. And the analysis back in Georgia, and George Chidi talked about this, who writes for the Intercept, kind of our Georgia correspondent. He said that it seemed like what people assumed that she was doing is that everybody knew that there was going to be one less seat, and so one less Democratic seat. And so she was trying to signal both to centrist Democrats and also to Republicans that she was going to be the most right-wing Democrat. And so as the most right-wing Democrat, they better not kind of come after her because she'll be the most electable against a Republican. Whereas Lucy McBath generally, despite all the different money she's getting from a lot of different places, generally just voted as a Democrat, mainline Democrat. Like whatever the party was putting up, that's what she voted for. And so Boudreaux thought that she was kind of saving herself. And so, in fact, they did end up eliminating Lucy McBath's district. Lucy McBath lives in Marietta, Georgia, which is nowhere near the 7th. But she ran in the 7th anyway because there's no law that says you have to live in the district to run there, to represent it. And by all accounts, she didn't visit there a whole lot, but she had enough money to run ads. And the party was just deeply frustrated, or the party electorate was just deeply frustrated with Boudreaux for screwing up Build Back Better and screwing up the Biden agenda. And McBath, as a result, just annihilated her. So it would be one thing if Boudreaux went down for her principles, and she was really against whatever's in Build Back Better. Right. But she thought she was doing the clever play, and it just got crushed.
What's amazing to me is that the voters seem to be punishing this kind of behavior more than the party leadership, and they're undercutting the party's vision for the entire presidency.
Yeah. Yes. What the Democratic primary voters are showing is that they don't like that these centrist candidates have undermined the progress that the Biden administration was making. Because if you go back and look at his approval rating from the first half of 2021, when he's doing a $2 trillion rescue plan, and basically, sounds like Bernie Sanders is doing ventriloquism through him. His approval numbers are through the roof.
Right.
Then Afghanistan and the collapse of Build Back Better, because if you remember, Build Back Better was killed in this brutal public fashion. They would take every popular piece of it, elevate it to the public, and say, hey, you like this child tax credit? This is really nice, isn't it? We're killing it. Hey, you like this climate money? You like this? So it wasn't as if it was all done quietly behind these. It was like, here are all these popular things we could do.
Right.
And then day after day after day, the news would be, but we're not going to do it. And so now there's talk that Build Back Better is, and I've got some reporting on this too, that Manchin is negotiating earnestly with Schumer. Like, it seems like,
and I'm curious if this has to do with this slaughter that we're seeing of the
voters
centrists.
Are like, just do something.
Right.
And they're like, okay, fine. And classic.
Because for months it had been, it's dead. I'm done. We're not going back.
And it's of course classic that King Manchin announced that it's still the responsibility of the party to get something done from Davos, from an interview in Davos. Davos man deems that now it won't be the full 3.5 trillion. What they're talking about is like a 550 billion, 700 billion, something.
Right.
But it would mean lower drug prices. It would mean climate money. It would mean taxes on private equity and the super rich. There's still good things that they can do, but the window's closing to get it done. What's your guess? I don't like to do the forecasts here. Do you think this is just? The smart money is always on Democrats doing nothing, failing, but what percentage would you put it at this point?
Oh gosh, well, it's certainly higher than it was in terms of something being able to happen. Because I do. This is such a clear message, not just the primaries today, but the ones in the preceding weeks. That again, voters are tired of nothing happening. They would like something. They would like something visionary to be passed. So I think the probability is increasing, but I'm not gonna stake any hopes and dreams on Joe Manchin. Yeah,
no, exactly. Well, Ken, as always, thanks for joining here.
My pleasure.
Anything good to plug? We got Deconstructed is the Intercept podcast, as well as Intercepted. Check those out. Rising Fridays. If people are wondering why I'm here, I'm only doing Rising on Fridays now with Emily Jashinsky. We'll have Ken on there as often as we can get him. What else? Intercept.com, and keep watching Breaking Points. What else? Anything else to plug?
If you're a federal official, hit me up on Signal.
There you go. Exactly. His Signal is basically in your pinned tweet or in your bio?
Yep, it's in my Twitter bio.
Excellent. Give Ken all the scoops, and we'll see you later.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.